Two things you should know before we get started. One, I did not like the Predator 20 Mutator range. It wasn't for me, and I was fairly vocal in my criticism of it. And two, I also very much dislike boots that only do minor updates and call themselves a brand new model. So, how much hope do you think there is for this? What's up guys, I'm James and welcome to BootWizard Boot Reviews. Today we are going to be looking at the brand new Predator Freak.1 low from Adidas and comparing it to what it replaces, the Predator Mutator 20.1 low. This is a facelift version, so there's not a full redesign here, so it's tweaks here and there. Are they enough to justify it being a brand new boot? And have they fixed any of the problems that I kind of shouted about for an entire year because I felt like nobody else would? Remember to like the video, get subscribed to the channel, and if you haven't already, head over to patreon.com/bootwizard where you can check out how you can support the channel. It is immeasurably appreciated from all of our patrons and anybody who can help us out here at BootWizard. Let's get into it. When I dropped my review of the Predator 19.1 a couple of years ago now, it had a big thumbnail that said, "Don't buy the 19.1. And then I did my review of the Predator Mutator 20.1, and it had a big thumbnail that said, "Don't buy the Predator 20.1. You will notice that this video does not have a thumbnail that says, "Don't buy the Freak.1. So that should indicate that there's definitely an improvement here, and much of that improvement comes in the form of the upper. If you were to look at this from a purely technical perspective, just got a list of tech specs and did a comparison, you could be forgiven for thinking that the 0.1 low Freak and the 0.1 low Mutator are exactly the same, because this still provides you with that same prime knit textile upper. Now, to clarify that, this is not the same prime knit upper that you're going to get on the plus level model, but it is still listed as prime knit. I don't know why, because they're very different materials. It's just a prime knit textile, and I really feel like that needs to be clearer. But anyway, same upper material and an almost identical construction. Nothing has changed here with regards to the shape, apart from the collar. You can see that this has been changed and refined, and I must say it is welcome. I didn't dislike this at all, but this little tab that stuck out the top here, just kind of taking that off, almost in the style that they did with the new X Ghosted line, I think it makes the boot look better, and it also just feels a little bit more like it wraps onto my foot and a little bit more snug. It's all in my head, there's absolutely no difference, but I do like that slight design tweak. Of course, one thing where you can see a big change is in the demon skin. So while the base material might be the same, the construction might be the same, the demon skin is absolutely different. What we've got here is demon skin 2.0. So what they've done is they've taken the existing idea of the demon skin, which on the 0.1 low previously was different to what you got on the plus level model. You can see there's two different types of demon skin here. That's no longer the case with the Predator Freak.1 and the Predator Freak Plus. They have exactly the same demon skin. There's just a slight difference in the number of spikes. And in actual fact, the 0.1 low Freak has more demon skin spikes than the Plus. But what this does as a combination of giving you that same demon skin and the impact that that has on the upper material, which we'll get into in a second, this actually leads this to feeling like a much more premium boot. One of my big complaints about the 20.1 low and the 20.1 was purely that they didn't feel premium enough for a top-end boot. In my eyes, and the way that Adidas tend to push these boots, the Plus and the 0.1 are co-top-end models, and I was disappointed that the 0.1 low didn't feel like that last time. However, here, because of the way that this new Demon Skin pattern interacts with that prime knit textile upper, it is so much softer and it feels so much more premium as a result of that. Then you put on top of that the fact that the Demon Skin 2.0 is actually the same from the Plus and the 0.1, and all of a sudden you've got me convinced that I'm buying a top-end football boot. Overall, just feels much higher quality than the previous generation, and they've not really done that much to it. So it feels more premium. Does it actually perform any better? Well, for starters, because that upper feels so much softer, it just feels better on feet. We'll get into all the fit and comfort later because they haven't quite fixed everything, but this is a really nice start. And the way that this Demon Skin has now been positioned, moved, and shaped does mean that I feel like it doesn't have as big of an impact on your touch on the ball, which is fantastic because what that means is my touch, my control isn't overly affected when I don't want it to be, but when I want to hit the ball and generate maybe more spin on the ball, the Demon Skin comes into play to help. And I think that's happened as a combination of the Demon Skin just simply being softer. The shape, I'm not sure if it's made a huge difference. It is similar to what you got on the Plus level model previously, but because it's more spaced out, it doesn't actually get in the way as much, which was a complaint I had with the Plus level model. This was a gimmick. I called it a gimmick in a couple of videos, one very recently that didn't work effectively. This I didn't mind actually. I thought that the Demon Skin did a decent job, but it was maybe overkill. I think this is a nice balance, and I can't really stress enough how important it is that this change has made a difference to the softness and the feel of the upper. That is the big plus from this change of Demon Skin spikes, and I think this overall is a huge improvement. What Adidas have done here is more than enough for me to be happy with this being a brand new model. Now, as I said previously, I have come down hard on boots that have just been released for the sake of being released. The Predator 18.1 to 19.1, there was barely a difference there, and it really irritated me. It's happened with many, many boots, and Adidas is the primary culprit. This is how you do a proper facelift update between two generations without changing the whole boot. We accept that these days we get boots every 12 months, pretty much, updates. This is a proper update that fixes some of the issues and provides you with a product that performs better than what came before it. So, do I love it? No, it's still not a boot that I personally would be reaching for again to go and play in. However, it is a boot that I am significantly happier with and more likely to wear. And I think that's big from a personal point of view, and it also means that this is easier for me to recommend to other people like you guys to try out. There are some more issues, we'll get to them in a second, which might throw you off them, so stick around. But let's talk about the traction and see if anything's different there. Traction is the control frame outsole, which, as you can see, has not changed at all. This is absolutely identical. The only difference here being that this rear heel portion, which has the same colored effect as what you got from, say, the Dark Motion pack, where it's that fade, actually is wearable. So you do get a little bit of a wearable finish on this, even if it's not chrome, which again, adds to that feeling of the boot being more premium. And then if you do look down the control frame, there's not a single difference. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't dislike this. It's pretty good. You've got your kind of almost diamond shaped studs all the way through the front, some curved edges, some longer bladed studs in the heel. It's not a bad stud pattern. It's pretty decent for FG and AG. It's not blowing my mind. It is better than the previous control frame, and it's pretty hard to criticize. Like, it's decent, nice and rigid and stable through the midfoot and the heel, which is something that I love, and there's definitely enough flex in the forefoot there. It's a good outsole. I have no complaints here, and carrying it over is something we should have expected and something that I'm not very upset about. We don't spend too long dwelling on the looks of boots these days on BootWizard because it's not important to the performance of a boot, and you can see them. You don't need me to tell you whether they're good looking or not. But this is a launch colorway, and we will take a quick look at this, and I quite like it. I had my reservations when I first saw the images, but the more that I look at this, the more I think this is actually a really solid launch colorway. I love black, white, and red Predators, the same as everybody else, but they dropped that with the previous model, and I think this is a nice change. I'm sure we'll get the black, white, and red eventually, and that will look fantastic. Check out Chris Pottle on Instagram. He has a fantastic concept design for a black, white, and red Predator Freak Plus, which is really good. But this, I think, looks great. I like the kind of effect of it kind of cracking and breaking all the way through the front of the boot, and the way that the new demon skin spikes are arranged and organized, I just think looks great. It really adds an extra dimension to the boot. It actually looks like it's in motion, which is really, really good. There are also a couple of other minor tweaks, and I'm not sure how much impact they have on the performance of the boot, but if you look at the Freak and where the seam is, it actually runs in more of a zigzag pattern down both sides of the boot, whereas if you look on the 0.1, it's a straight backward seam on the medial side, and then the lateral side is much more aggressively zigzagged. So that's a slight change. The padding element, there isn't that on the outside of the heel. There's also a taping on the back. I'm pretty confident they're both design elements because the padding on the inside of the boots seems to remain absolutely identical. And then finally, the actual stitching pattern itself in this textile, which you can see through the tongue, does seem to be slightly different. It's just stitched in a slightly different way, which seems to give the Freak just a more premium, softer feeling. And all of these little elements, these little tweaks and changes seem to have just benefited the Freak quite a large amount when you start to add them all up. I liked the look of the 20.1 low. I think this was a good looking football boot, even if I didn't love it performance wise. I think this looks even better, and I like the colorway. Reminds me a little of the AdiPower launch, that blue, yellow, and white AdiPower launch, which is, it's not a bad thing either. It's a boot I also enjoyed. So there's been minimal modifications, so we would assume there is no weight change or minimal weight change, but any change, of course, will come probably from that demon skin change. So let's get the 20.1 Freak on there, and that comes in at 223 grams. This is a US 8, UK 7.5. And then if we compare it to its predecessor, the 20.1 Low, exactly the same size. They're both in used condition, but only so much, like they've been tested, and that comes in at 221 grams, so there's barely a difference between them, as you might expect. Now, it's not the lightest boot you're ever going to come across, and it's definitely not the lightest you can pick up in today's market. However, it's actually a weight that I can really get behind. It's just not everything needs to be the lightest boot you could ever put on your feet. It has advantages, but it also has disadvantages, and having something a little bit more substantial, especially in this style of boot, I think is really, really good. Really nice to be able to sit here and like praise a Predator. I'm enjoying this. Value for money, these still come in at £180, 220 euros, which is standard pricing for a Predator 0.1 level model, any Adidas 0.1 level model, which when it is decent is actually good value for money when you consider that, for example, a Nike Elite level boot in the Mercurial range will set you back 250 euros plus. So you're saving a good bit of money by going for a 0.1 level model, which on the whole and traditionally are better than the plus level models because they have the laces, so they fit better. One thing to consider is that if you can buy these in pounds, it's worth doing because in pounds they're £180. €220 is more than £180. £180 is like €205. So if you have the option to buy them in pounds, then you'll save yourself some money at full price at least. I will leave some links down in the description for pounds and dollar purchases. Alright, the fit and the comfort. You would assume that because this is the same boot construction-wise and shape-wise as the previous generation, it will fit and feel the same way, which if you saw my review of the previous generation is not a good thing because I basically hated it. However, again, that demon skin spike change, the softness of the upper has changed up the way the boot molds and shapes around your foot a little bit, which is a good thing because what it means is through this midfoot area where the boot on the previous generation was unbelievably tight, like to me, at points unwearably tight. It took me hours of walking around the house with the laces undone to get them to even mold to a point where I was happy and I wasn't getting foot cramps in them. I really struggled with the fit on the previous generation. Because of this new softer material and the way that it stretches out that little bit more, it's actually better through the midfoot area. It's not as tight. However, with that said, it is still very tight through the midfoot. The only difference is that I didn't have to spend hours and hours and hours walking around breaking them in. It just was tight, and it still is tight. It's a shape that I don't enjoy because it is, in my opinion, still too tight through the midfoot. And because of that softer upper material, allowing the material to kind of stretch out around your feet that little bit more, the toe box is not helped because that was previously too wide and too roomy, and that's absolutely still the case here. There is still far too much room in this toe box, especially when compared to the tightness in the midfoot. I still believe that the shape of this boot is off. There's no two ways about it. I do not like the shape. So with that said, if you do have a wide foot and you're looking to pick these up, if you have a wide midfoot, I would steer clear. They are just simply too tight, and I don't think they break in enough. I have a wide foot, but they haven't given a great deal over testing time. And then in the forefoot, if you have a particularly wide forefoot and a narrow midfoot, these will work out, but I don't suppose there's many people that have that particular foot setup. Something that is really important to note is the fact that because they have changed the demon skin, it has affected the softness of the upper. There is now even more volume and space through that forefoot area. Let's take a look at these two boots. These are both exactly the same size, one Freak, one 20.1 low, and you can see that I have more room, more volume in that Freak.1 toe box than I do in the 20.1. And then on top of that, what that leads to is a boot that runs very slightly longer. The 20.1 low, the previous generation, is I have very, very little room at the end of that boot. It fits lengthwise almost perfectly. The Freak.1 has extra room, like it's almost half a thumb on the end of the boot there, which makes me want to try half size down just to see what it comes out like. But considering the amount of room isn't that much, and also the fact that that's going to make the midfoot even tighter, it's not my recommendation. True to size is my recommendation, and if you're between sizes, definitely pick the smaller one. If anybody was wondering, yes, the demon skin spikes, they still squeak. They squeak even more when they're wet, and it's still annoying. That's your first look at the Predator Freak.1 low. If I haven't covered something, if there's a question you'll really want the answer to, stick something down in the comments. I'll reply to everyone, and if there's enough variety of questions, I'll make another video for you, no problems at all. Do remember to like this video if you did enjoy this, and of course, if you want to see the plus level model, do get subscribed because we'll get that on the channel very, very shortly, so stick the notifications on as well. And if you want to support us, please do, and head over to patreon.com/BootWizard. That's all from me here today. Have a good one, and I'll see you soon.